Hello and welcome to Talking Heads. This is a Telum Media series where we speak with company leaders to hear their insights on business, communications and leadership. Today we are joined by Robin Goh, SVP and Head of Group Marketing and Communications at Certis Group in Singapore. Robin, thank you so much for chatting with us today.
Thanks for having me, Brian.
You've had a varied career in communications so far, spanning many years, working across many industries like hospitality, services, aviation, security. How do you feel your experiences in these many sectors has sort of shaped the way that you lead now and the way that you approach PR?
The variety of jobs obviously reveals my age as well, I guess, of course. Well, I've been fortunate enough to be able to undertake various roles at various stages, obviously, of my career. And more than the wealth of experience that I've amassed, and which I'm obviously very thankful for, I've also been very fortunate to witness, obviously, the evolution of the world of media, PR, and communications, and obviously marketing, for that matter, considering the more recent roles that I've undertaken. Now, PR and communications, and obviously the practitioners, like all of us, have come a long way, haven't we? From the days of faxing our press releases to media outlets, to an era of self-publishing, content creation, to the use of influencers or influencer marketing, and now AI. Again, also the media landscape has changed drastically, and what we define as news and entertainment, how we consume them, the attention span of the average netizens. With all these in the mix, I think people are always looking for new sources of credible, updated information. And therefore, at the end of the day, what do communicators like us do? We obviously, and I always say this, and this is something that, I bring along with me everywhere I go. We drive impact by harnessing the true power of what we can do, our true power of communications, and impact, impact in terms of results for the business, and even more so, impact to the community we live in, we work in, impact in a broader sense to the planet, and obviously, even longer term for the generations ahead of us. To me, I've never lost sight of that. And from communicating is how we tell and we package these stories to drive impact, to drive influence. At the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
Could you tell us a little bit about how Certis Group sort of creates that sort of impact in Singapore through your products?
Right. I think Certis is obviously part of, the security industry. And I think a lot of people forget that the security industry is actually a cornerstone in Singapore's economic transformation journey. I mean, our global reputation as a safe haven has attracted international talent and investments that have bolstered Singapore's economic development. I think a lot of people don't know this. We actually have some 280 companies that hire close to 50,000 workers in the security industry alone. And for 65 years now, Certis has been at the forefront of the industry, right? Besides having the largest footprint in Singapore, and I do apologize for sounding almost arrogant, we have expanded, to Australia, Hong Kong, Macau, and Qatar. And in terms of, what we've done, we've been around, again, like I said, for 65 years now. We have obviously chartered and trailblazed, right, what security meant, in this part of the world. In 2005, we embarked on our own transformation, and today we are no longer a security firm supplying manpower to ensure the safety of malls, airports, jewel, hospitals, universities, and key installations. We are today a data-powered operations technology solutions powerhouse, and we have the ability today to consult, to build, and orchestrate full operational systems that can include security, facilities management, customer service, data analytics, the works, right? For any business on the planet.
Another thing that I've been really interested to see from Certis is your recent announcement of your big redevelopment of your headquarters.
The Certis HQ, well, so that is going to be probably one of the most exciting milestones that we're going to have in our history. I'll bring everybody back a little bit. So we are obviously at Paya Lebar, and that's where the Certis building is, right? Last year, we pulled it all down, and on the 1st of December, we broke ground, and we are going to convert the entire space to what is known as Paya Lebar Green. So Paya Lebar Green will obviously house a 12-story building, where we will lease out to other businesses, and obviously a shorter 8-story building will house the Certis Group HQ. Now, the entire redevelopment that we are doing together with Landys have already won 2 awards in terms of going green. So that's something that we're going to be really, really huge on. Again, Paya Lebar Green, as the name implies, is not a coincidence. We are going to take a lot of green measures, and besides it being green and obviously good for the climate and the environment, we are also taking into account wellness of everyone working there, the entire community altogether. And even more so, this being our new Certis Group headquarters, we will use this opportunity to obviously showcase what the history, obviously, of Certis as a homegrown brand in Singapore, how we've journeyed through and grown together with Singapore after 65 years, but even more so, how we have evolved, and there will be kind of showcases, not to mention, obviously, you know, a mothership, a bastion of a HQ that we can all be proud of.
I guess that leads quite nicely into kind of reflecting on your role as a leader, as a senior person in the industry, and also in the business. How important, you know, is the well-being and, you know, the experience of your staff and employees? Because there clearly was a lot of thought that went into this. I mean, as a leader, how important is that to you?
I view myself as a servant leader. I think, you know, I've been, and I think if there were hard lessons, you know, made, you know, when I was younger, I've made mistakes aplenty, and I still do, I reckon, right? On reflection, I think, you know, I was a little headstrong, doggedly stubborn, I think, and almost combative when it came to some of the roles that I had. I remember how up in arms I'd be dealing with animal rights groups, for example, right? Animal activists, and that, you know, for close to a decade. Then I told myself it's not a bad thing being passionate about my job and obviously protecting the business that I work for. Well, looking back, I think I could have listened more, took instruction better, perhaps not be such a nightmare to my bosses. But you know what they say about old age, right? I listen a lot more now in terms of my leadership and my management style. I consult my team a lot, and also I think, you know, it's important as senior leaders. I think we get really busy, and you know, it's important to listen to obviously our peers, look at what our competitors are doing, and most importantly, listen to the teams you hired, and that's why you hired them, right? That said, you know, my fundamentals are always about making sure that my teams growing not just in terms of their management style and the skill sets and what they apply at work, but also as people, bearing in mind that they will be managers and leaders leading other people. And I think, you know, almost like a parent, that sounds terrible, but almost like a parent, you want to make sure that, you know, they grow not just as professionals, but as leaders as well. So I think that for me is fundamental.
So we could go back in time, and you've just started your career in PR and comms, and you could tell yourself then one piece of advice. What would that be? One tip.
One piece of advice, if I could tell myself then, yeah, just listen. Yeah, I've been. I'll be first to admit, right? Again, that's what old age does to you. I'll be first to admit that when I was younger, I obviously we've also got leaders that, you know, you learn from, and mentors that you learn good things from, and obviously, you know, some things you don't want to perpetuate, you know, even, you know, some bad habits, you know, because nobody's perfect, even bosses are not perfect. And I think one of the things that I if I'm guilty of is, again, like I mentioned, I think I don't listen enough. And I'm now very conscious about making sure that, you know, in the work society, in the work world, to embrace that diversity that we have, and that only makes us stronger. So I think it's important to listen a lot more. And you know that if there's one takeaway, that would be what I'll tell myself. You know, if I could go back 20 years.
Awesome. We'll send a carrier pigeon back 20
Yes,
years.
please. Yes, a time machine would be good.
Yeah. So now we're in the future, we're in the present time. What sort of excites you the most about your role now, your job, and also just the communications industry at large at the moment?
Well, I keep telling everyone, AI will not take away your jobs, but people who use AI will, right? That's just one of the many warnings I dish out. Yeah, not to everyone. Not everyone wants to hear them, of course. But I think what excites me is also what keeps me on my toes. Well, the transformation of how we communicators communicate from the start to the end of our communications and marketing funnels have so drastically transformed. And whilst exciting, there's just so much to learn and keep up with. You know, I remember that trajectory where you know, in 1997, right, and learning, and versus, you know, within that span of 5 years of learning, for example, and now giving myself 5 years to learn, just so much more that's happening, and the world is just transforming so drastically, and there's so much to keep up with. Which goes back to my earlier point about listening, right? So many times, again, the more senior we are, there's just so much work, and it's important to learn from our peers or our competitors, and obviously the teams that we've hired. So exciting shifts ahead, but yet at the same time, I think adapting is something that is really, really important, because that's how we get better. That's how we get further as professionals, and as leaders as well.
There are a lot of you know, businesses and communications practitioners at smaller outfits that might be trying. It can be quite overwhelming when they're trying to evolve and adapt. You know, whether they're doing B2C communications work or B2B. Do you have sort of any tips or like a piece of advice for kind of those outfits that are trying to adapt, and there is so much happening out there that they just don't even know where to start?
I do. I think at the end of the day, it's all about the audience, isn't it? Right? The messaging, I think just be focused on your audience. All right. So the messaging, or what I call now the storytelling, and the channels used to raise awareness, to educate, to convert. I think, you know, that's what, you know, the story is, right? It's for the audience and the messaging and the storytelling, and, you know, to derive an outcome. And that outcome can be, again, like I mentioned, is it to raise awareness, to educate, to convert, right? Most of my career was spent speaking to people on the street, right, with the intention to shape certain perceptions or influence certain behaviors, right? Be kind to animals, partake in conservation, be proud of the world's best airport, visit Universal Studios Singapore, fly Qantas, love your postman, right? So some of the things, I mean, I couldn't be prouder, you know, of the campaigns that my teams and I have worked on. But again, you know, it's all about, you know, knowing what your audience needs, or pushing an agenda, or driving an impact to your audience. And I think that's very important. You mentioned, Rian, the B2B business. You know, again, I've also, you know, kind of pivoted, right, from a B2C, a purely B2C business, a purely B2C career, most of my life, to a B2B one. You know, so again, you know, when you speak to a different and oftentimes a smaller audience, the intended outcome is often conversion, right, for a B2B business. And therefore the messaging and the methodology is obviously very different. But going back to my first point about communications, at the end of the day, it is about the audience and what we do to engage them, right? For the smaller outfits, I think being nimble is really, really important. And I say that not just, you know, to our friends and SMEs and the practitioners who may not have roles, public relations and publicity and content and so on. They may have all this rolled into one. Think about it this way: it's excellent training, because, you know, I tell my teams now, it's all about how we get the message across. And again, you know, one of the things, you know, I think PR and getting media publicity, that's all good, you know, but I think storytelling extends an expense. You know, it's a lot more than that now as compared to 1997 when I first started, you know, where, you know, media publicity was all the rage, you know, but just you know, dig your toes in and just ensure that, you know, storytelling can take so much. And it's a gamut of how you want to tell a story, you know, and, you know, make sure that you've got as much as you can covered, right? And again, hone your skills in that manner, because I think, you know, that will always be useful in time to come.
If you could think of one change that you would like to see in the communications industry, what one thing you'd like to see changed, or you know, an emergence of a new practice, maybe, what would that be?
More so a mindset change, I think, rather than a change itself. I think one of the things that and I've done all my life is obviously press coverage, right? And that is actually that's something that I would love changed, right? That mindset about how much press coverage one gets on mainstream media. I mean, come on, it's 2023 now. And again, this comes from someone who started again in 1997, where press coverage was all the rage and possibly the only KPI I had then in my appraisal. I think it's time to kind of ditch that. I mean, of course, what's there not to like about getting good publicity, right? But there's just so much more than that today, in seeing, you know, so much more than just seeing your business in the headlines, right? There's just so much more effective ways to get your message across to different spectrums of our audience. You know, people should see that, you know, as communicators like ourselves, we evolved into holistic storytellers, you know, not just, you know, kind of media release pushes, right? And again, why? To drive impact through whatever platform to whoever, right? Or whatever aspect that deems precious to us, you know, and, you know, gone should be the days where, you know, our success is pegged to just how much news coverage we attain. Honestly, I think that's not very woke. And I think, you know, that's something that strangely I still see today, you know, 25 years on. But, you know, I would love, you know, people to move away from that mindset.
Where do you think that sort of stems from?
Well, yeah, I think that's how the world of public relations first started. I think there was a very particular role that we did dealing with the press, or what we call media relations, and that was how you know, the genesis, so to speak, of the industry. And I think, you know, people have forgotten that, you know, we've evolved. We've evolved into an entire suite, and now we're all now capable of, and we should be, of strategizing and executing an entire suite of storytelling, more than producing a press release, you know, for mainstream media. I think, you know, no fault there. And again, like I said, there's nothing to complain about. Who doesn't like getting good publicity in the Straits Times and in Dinner Taobao and Berita Harian and Tamil Meratsu and Channel News Asia, right? However, that shouldn't be the only measure of success, right? Again, likewise for PR practitioners, and I said this earlier, you know, don't pack yourself and don't chain yourself, right, to using that as your yardstick as to how good you are as a PR practitioner. It's about the entire suite of storytelling, and that's why, you know, I've always encouraged teams to cross-train, to adapt, and to find out what's happening in industry, so much so that they learn the full suite of that storytelling process.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time, Robin. It was excellent to get your insights, hear a little bit about your work and Certis as well. Thank you so much.
Oh, good. Thank you so much, Rian. Thanks for having me.